before I worked for PSE, I actually have had some experience selling and working with utilities. When I worked in the Bahamas, we installed the largest solar and wind power system in the country, which is not necessarily to say very much. And we wanted to grid intertie it, which was prohibited by law at the time. So we did make some efforts at trying to work with the Bahamas Electricity Corporation to make this happen. Weren't successful, and we just did it anyway. And the local island, we were on a small island, the administrator found out about this, and he actually thought it was really cool. He hadn't seen anything like this, thought we needed to move in this direction. The entire country of the Bahamas burns diesel fuel to make electricity. Retail rates, both residential and commercial, at the time about 26 cents per kilowatt hour. When the headquarters did an audit on the island and found that we were paying essentially no bill, and found out that we grid intertied this system, they threatened to shut us down. But fortunately, we had the Prime Minister of the country come to our facility, and he thought it was fantastic what we were doing, praised us, and then publicly criticized the utility for dragging its feet. So the moral of the story is, if you want to get something done with a utility, sometimes it works to go behind their back and then get the Prime Minister publicly. I can't say it will work all the time. The fallout actually was, for the following year, we both were receiving bills from the production side of the meter and the consumption side. So we're getting a double bill for the next year. And we refused to pay. So I'm not sure if that will always work. But my experience working at PSE, I've worked with, looked at hundreds of, probably around 100 proposals for power plants, and seen proposals ranging everything from the stack of paper this high to 5 pages of essentially more like a pamphlet. But more on the emerging technology side, that's what I'm most focused on. We've seen a number of companies come through our doors and pitch their products and services to us. It's been very interesting. I wanted to second one point that John made about understanding the utilities regulatory structure is really important. Understanding how the company actually makes money and what the risk-reward profile is for each utility. Because, for example, as PSE is an investor-owned utility, the regulatory structure essentially encourages us to be fairly risk-averse. If we take on a risky project and it goes well, we will earn our up to 10.1% regulated rate of return for our investors, and the rest of the savings will go on to the customers, which is great. If we take on a risky project and it doesn't go well, our investors eat most of the cost. So it's a bit unbalanced in that sense. And then also, we are big lumbering organizations. It does take time to work with, and I wish that was different. In terms of advice for entrepreneurs coming to sell new products and services, I think it's very important to understand. This seems very basic, but it's extremely important to really understand the problem. And some of the problems that the utilities face, that we're facing, are extremely complex. And I think the best example of that is renewables integration, wind integration right now. And that's getting a lot of press in the, it's getting a lot of attention in the press. So you're hearing about wind curtailments, challenges integrating wind. But this is an issue that not even we fully understand. We have 3 full-time people working on modeling the cost and the operational impacts of wind integration, and we're just getting to the point where we can begin to use these models to drop in new solutions and say, what is the cost benefit of this? But I can't tell you how much emphasis there seems to be on this without a real full understanding of what the value proposition of, say, energy storage in particular is for wind integration. And it's extremely challenging, I think, for entrepreneurs to really get a full grasp and develop the business cases for these types of products and services. And I think that goes into my second point, is that as much work as you can do to develop a full business case really helps the utility. Coming to us and say, you can't just say that this product will help with wind integration. We had a developer come in who was looking at small-scale pumped hydro, distributed pumped hydro, 200 megawatt size, and I found it extremely helpful that that person began to give me some of their first cut analysis on, what are the different revenue streams, what are your savings going to be from this product. I thought most of their assumptions were extremely optimistic, but it put the onus on me to then take his analysis and respond to it, because I received something from him, and it really began to facilitate a back and forth instead of just a meeting saying, this product is great, you should buy it. So that's really important. And in that same space, I've had a lot of experience in the energy storage space, so I'm going to be recurrent on these themes. We were considering doing a $5 to $10 million pilot project with an energy storage system, and so we dug really deep into this issue. I went to a 3-day energy storage conference. This was several years ago now, but there was not a single session on economics, what the benefits were of energy storage, not a single session. And I was pretty disappointed at that. I think the situation has improved since then. People are really beginning to understand what the value proposition is for the utility. Another piece of advice would be to sell, this is again obvious, but sell as high as you can in the organization. It's very easy if you come to someone like me. I have tons of things to do. It's easy for me to say no, but if you can capture the imagination of one of the executives, and that's all it really takes, is not necessarily showing them the value proposition, but they're going to send it down to me and say, do the analysis on this, and then I'm going to have to come back to them with a pretty detailed analysis on it. So it's going to force me to do better analysis. And the sales cycle, I think one of my colleagues here, and I have a lot of colleagues and my boss in the audience, so I can't badmouth PSE too much, but he said that take your expectations of the sales cycle and then triple it. We do move very slow, and I think it's very important, especially as a startup company, not to get a sense of how serious the utility is in your product, because we love to meet with these companies because we get a free lesson in emerging technologies and we get to learn from this, but we will continue to express interest, and we might not necessarily be all that serious about it. So be careful as to how much time you spend and get a sense of how serious the utility is. Well, we're learning, it's great. One of the questions for the panelists is what the sales cycle is in the post-financial crisis. Our chief strategy officer at panels continues to mention how market prices are down, load growth is stagnant. We think this is in the Pacific Northwest, surplus regional capacity, and tight budgets right now. We are definitely tightening our budgets for pilot projects and the like. So those are my initial comments, and look forward to your questions.